So I know you're probably feeling a bit overwhelmed right now, learning about the plague and the threat they pose to the entire galaxy, but we are sort of on a tight timetable, so you're gonna have to get over that. Right now, we need to get to the next part of the briefing, specifically, an info session on the alien race known as the Asterians. So what you currently know about the Asterians is probably from entertainment vids and such. Those vids presenting them as either a devious race aiming to subvert GCPS society, or aloof beings with ancient wisdom our poor human minds have yet to comprehend. And like all dramatizations, there is a little truth to both. But honestly, to most Asterians, we humans are more like destructive children that they would love to ignore if humanity didn't keep making so much of a mess of things. Let's start with the basics. The average Asterian appears human in shape, although taller, thinner with pointed ears, and all actually physically fit. I don't think I've ever seen a fat Asterian. Anyway, that's where the similarities end. Their insides are very different. First off, they have a 3-part heart-lung organ that pumps a copper oxide-based blood throughout their body. This, plus a bunch of other minor genetic quirks, allows them to live as many as 1,000 G-standard years without showing any outward signs of aging. They also have 2 brains, a primary cerebrum in their usual place, and a smaller secondary one centrally located near the stomach. This 2-brain combo gives Asterians an acute sensitivity to neuroelectrical impulses, allowing them to utilize empathic telepathy that allows them to feel the emotions of close companions. As for genders, they have 3, designated as true male, neuter male, and female. Although this is very simplified, there are apparently socio-biological triggers that might move an Asterian from neuter male to a true male, and perhaps vice versa, but it's not really understood, and attempts to ask the Asterians has either been met with harsh words, or in a few rare cases, violence. Traditionally, true males tend to be warriors, merchants, and bankers. Less aggressive neuter males tend to be politicians and diplomats, while females tend to follow careers within the arts and sciences. But there is no real societal pressure to stay within a career path, so every Asterian is free to choose any path that suits them. So you might see female warriors or true male politicians, so if you meet an Asterian, try not to make any assumptions. Rituals and traditions are a big part of Asterian life, and they've got rituals for almost everything. How food is prepared and eaten, how peers, family, and colleagues should be greeted, the decoration of houses, and the arrangements of streets and buildings. To the Asterians, colors, smells, and the position of objects can all have significance, even things they can't technically control. There are libraries of omens that may be observed in everything from weather patterns and the conjunction of stars, to the fall of petals from flowers. These rituals are not superstitions as humans understand it, nor are they simply conventions used to bind Asterian society. All of these practices are linked to 2 key concepts of Asterian philosophy. The first is a universal order, or unity. To the Asterians, the universe has an innate spirit, a natural state of interconnectedness that can be tapped into through meditation and practice, allowing them to gain a sensitivity to the underlying patterns of energy that exist at a subatomic level, which they can use in their daily lives to promote success through harmony. This may sound silly to you, but it's a philosophy that has worked for the Asterians, because this desire for unity has driven much of Asterian technological progress over their long history. The urge to understand everything's place in the universe, pushing an almost cultural imperative within the society to further technological advancement, but also integrate that technology in a way that won't disrupt the unity of their society. On Asterian worlds, entire cities float above vast, picturesque, ritually organized and shaped garden worlds. Machines harness the power of cosmic strings to allow the transmission of matter and thought over incredible distances, and huge schools of philosophy and advanced material research exist throughout the Empire. The second key concept of Asterian philosophy is the balance, or more specifically, the balance between life and death. A key concept that is little understood by GCPS scientists, but is a guiding principle of their society, and leads to actions that many find utterly inscrutable, especially when it comes to their military, which I'll get into later. I spoke a lot about the technological superiority of the Asterians, but not all Asterians subscribe to this philosophy of understanding through technological development, specifically a faction of Asterians known as the Kishi. They see technology as not aiding unity by removing inconvenient barriers and distractions, but potentially as an insulating factor that can misguide an Asterian by presenting a distorted or even false picture of the universe. In human society, this view might be mocked, but to the Asterians, the Kishi are highly valued and are completely integral to Asterian civilization. The development and inclusion of the Kishi, seen as a natural and essential consequence of progress through unity, basically 2 balanced halves that make a greater whole. The Kishi are also why you occasionally see Asterians in GCPS space. Some Kishi are inspired by humanity's curious nature and drive to succeed, believing that balance may best be served by allowing or even helping the GCPS grow further, as long as it's developed in a less destructive direction. To aid in this, many younger Kishi live and work in the GCPS as entertainers, bringing their primitive, I say with quotation marks, and colorful art, dance, and songs to the core. Others join one of a number of Dreadball teams across the galaxy. The popularity of Dreadball players is another avenue to try to influence GCPS culture. The Asterians, those that rely on tech and those who don't, all hail from the territory known as the Asterian Star Empire, one of the largest territories in the galaxy. Funnily enough though, as far as we can tell, they don't occupy most of it. Asterian tech is extremely advanced, so traveling between worlds is trivial. Combined with their long lifespans and quantum tunneling tech for instant transportation, they can simply choose the most ideal worlds to colonize, not bothering to try to occupy lesser, if perfectly livable, worlds in between. Because of this, there are apparently other races that live within their territory that the Asterians either have good relations with, or just leave alone. But this territory was once much larger. Thousands of years ago, the Asterians were ruled by some form of monarchy with royal families and such, all ruling from a territory now known to the Asterians as the Silent Lands, but we in the GCPS know as the Death Arc. These worlds in the Death Arc were some of the most densely populated planets, and held seats of great learning, philosophy, and innovation. That was until the Scourge appeared, the deadly mutagen that humanity now calls the Plague. How the Plague was created is unknown to humanity and most Asterians, and those few who do know aren't telling. Whatever its origin, it tore through the Asterian military, and corrupted everywhere it touched, laying waste to scores of worlds. It was only stopped when all links with the infected planets were severed, the quantum tunnels that enabled planetary travel were destroyed, and the remaining population sealed from the rest of the Empire with a blockade of warships. The Plague brought an end to the monarchy, since, most of the royal family was either dead or turned into monsters, and in its place, a new system of government, the Tesseract, was born. Across any of the worlds in Asterian space, you will find glowing palaces of light and life, known as halls, that are distributed across their empire. Within each hall, the bodies of the greatest Asterians lie entombed within pods. As for their minds, those are transmitted fully and permanently to the shared conscious space that exists between all of the halls. Their voice and their knowledge becomes one with those of all the other revered and exalted members of the Tesseract. Their judgments passed on through their consuls to guide and nurture all Asterians towards greater unity and better understanding of the balance. And that would have been the end of that tale, if humanity hadn't arrived and screwed everything up. The Asterians became aware of humanity when we first left our home system about 1,000 years ago. Or was it 2? Honestly, I never really paid attention in history class. Their cloaked observer ships trailed behind ours, and at first, the Asterians were impressed by us. Something about our inquisitive nature was viewed quite positively, and many believed we had great potential for future development. They were less excited about our tendency to subjugate any alien race we encountered with commercial or military might. Some Asterians, especially those in the military, warned about the dangers of allowing humanity to flourish, and thought it might be best if we were removed as a potential future threat. Thankfully, it didn't come to that for 2 reasons. Firstly, the Tesseract was still dealing with containing the Plague, and didn't want to be distracted by another race on the other side of the galaxy. And secondly, was the fact that almost all Asterians philosophically value all life. To the Asterians, the taking of life is seen as a terrible act. This doesn't make them pacifists in any way, and if the erasure of an entire species is found necessary, they will do so in a heartbeat, but they will at least feel really bad about it. Things came to a head when the GCPS started inching towards the Death Arc. Again, a few Asterians called for the destruction of the humans. Thankfully, the cooler heads of the Tesseract prevailed. They decided to go through the route of diplomacy. Their representatives spoke directly to the Council, and through negotiation, convinced them to ensure no one entered the Death Arc, which should have been the end of it. But as you know when we talked about the Plague, one corporation got greedy. Through their actions, the Plague had returned as a threat. And worse, through the infection of humanity, it had mutated significantly, causing it to become more coordinated and rapacious. To many Asterians, this was vindication for their call to wipe out humanity in ages past. Sadly for them, and happily for us, this was no longer an option. Firstly, because with artifacts popping up on random planets, humanity was not the only vector for infection. And secondly, trying to wipe out humanity now would be time-consuming, and the Plague would probably take advantage. Still, the Asterians can't afford to let the lesser races go about as they were, especially with the Plague once again threatening the galaxy. Where before, the more peaceable voices in the Tesseract held sway, the more militant voices are making their presence known, calling for more actions to restore the balance. Some of their military actions can be understood, such as the recovery of artifacts and the destruction of plague vectors. And by the destruction of plague vectors, I usually mean the destruction of a colony. The Asterians may hate the taking of life, but they hate and fear the plague much, much more. Their other actions in war are much more inscrutable. Many generals of other races see them as capricious and unpredictable in how and where they apply force. They appear from nowhere and once they're done, disappear just as quickly, with no explanation, with attempts to communicate with them utterly ignored. All of these actions are viewed by the Asterians as simply addressing the balance between life and death. And seeing as no human can really understand Asterian philosophy, many of their actions just seem rather nonsensical. Now before I get into the type of units that might be encountered on the battlefield, I should mention two bits of Asterian tech that are common in their forces. The first is that a lot of their weaponry is powered by a particular form of radiation, known as NOH, N-O-H, a radiation that allows certain Asterian weapons to instantaneously destroy the bonds between molecules, effectively disintegrating whatever it touches. So as you can guess, a shot from it is usually quite deadly. The next type of tech that is a major part of their military are remotely piloted constructs. You see, most Asterians don't fight directly on the battlefield. They fight through constructs that are typically operated by pilots safely cocooned in cloaked command vessels some distance from the actual combat. This is done in order to protect the pilots, both physically and metaphysically, from both danger and the act of taking lives. Piloting a construct offering a degree of separation that I guess makes them feel less guilty about killing people. The Asterians thinking it barbaric to personally be part of the bloodshed. To other races, feeling superior because you're not personally in the thick of things feels a bit, scummy. The most dangerous of these constructs are the ciphers, operated by those Asterians who are part of the clads, the elites of their military. These clad members are almost exclusively true male, and they find a life in the clads powerful and fulfilling, with its emphasis on control and knowledge of self, being both desirable personal qualities and essential for proper control of a cipher. When they join a clad, they undergo harsh martial training and rigorous mental conditioning, and if they prove worthy, they may be elevated to the ranks of the Shuri, the pilots of ciphers. Ciphers are largely mechanical in nature, but also partly organic, having been grown as much as built. The pilot's very consciousness is transmitted into the cipher through meditation and machinery, enabling him to inhabit its form as if it's his own flesh and bone. The process of bonding, of establishing the Sokuru for the first time, can take days or weeks, but once made, it can only be broken by the destruction of the cipher itself. This process of transmission of consciousness may keep the pilot's body physically safe, but it is not without its risks. Every time a pilot enters and leaves a cipher, they increase their risk of disassociation, their minds lost in a transition between, a risk that is further increased whenever a cipher is destroyed in combat. Besides the common cipher, there are two more specialized ciphers that we have faced so far. The first are the Black Talons, the elites of the elites, capable of striking at their foes with terrifying precision. We have also noted the presence of what is called a Spectra, one of their more advanced constructs. Taller than a Strider and much more lithe and agile, equipped with the most advanced stealth and energy shield technology. The other form of construct you might see on the battlefield are the Marionettes. These are piloted by the Shozen, essentially the rank and file of the Asterian military. They are far more diverse in terms of gender than the clads, and all are volunteers, choosing to spend some or all of their lives in military service. Unlike ciphers, these marionettes are operated more like drones, Shozen pilots controlling teams of constructs more or less simultaneously, their consciousness being rapidly beamed from one to another at will. They see and hear through each robot, and give it a command or sequence of commands before beaming into the next of their charges. The Kalishi also have a hand in fighting for the balance, but go about it rather differently. Like all Asterians, they revere life, but refuse to allow technology to insulate them from this most intense experience and sensation. For them, neither unity nor the balance are well served by removing oneself from the equation of death. Although they prefer a more primitive existence, they aren't stupid and will use tech when necessary. The arrows shot from their long bows, known as Busari, are primed with energy, allowing them to go through infantry armor, and their glaives, known as Paisani, appear made of wood, but are formed of a material that makes them extremely deadly. Alongside the Asterians, you will often find the lizard-like Mastodon, one of the few races that the Asterians are allied with. They have a culture steeped in tradition and honor, so the actions of profit-hungry corporations is something they don't really abide by. They don't have the grace of Asterians, but they more than make up for it with some serious firepower and toughness. When one of their Inashi comes at you with their light blades, or their Ozeki blasts you with their ion cannon, you're gonna have a bad time. The Asterian army also has deadly vehicles. A prime example is a Chroma Force platform, which is one of the most devastating vehicles that the GCPS has ever faced. It hovers above the battlefield, unleashing super heavy variants of either the Plasma Vortex or Fission Beamer as fire support for Asterian troops. Alongside the ground troops, you will find a variety of self-operated drones providing support, weapon drones provide cover fire, command drones provide logistical support, shield drones project barriers, and a variety of others. Now, all of these troops are believed to not be the most advanced military tools available to the Asterians. They are very careful about what they allow outside of their space, usually deploying exactly what is needed to complete a mission, which probably means that if the Asterians ever feel they themselves or the balance is truly threatened, they may bring tools of war that humanity may have no way of defending itself against. For now, all we can hope is that most of their efforts are focused on the plague, and that we are strong enough to defend GCPS interests, if their so-called balance requires them to try to put us in our place.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video on the Asterians in the Warpath universe. The haughty space elves who, just want harmony and peace and love of life. Unless they need to kill a bunch of people, then they're gonna do that in a heartbeat. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, comment, press the little bell so you know where I post, etc. And if you really like it and inclined and have a little cash, please consider sending a little money away to my Patreon and my Ko-fi account. The extra money gives you a chance to work on these stories I love. Anyway, thanks for listening / watching, and see you next time.